again, we're at the end of another long-term test here at Driving.ca. As you can see behind me here, we've got the 2024 Toyota Grand Highlander, and it's a bit of an unusual situation because we've had the chance this time to not only test it against a couple other vehicles, but we had a couple other driving staff get in it as well, and they've got lots to say about it as well. Before we get into those opinions, let's get a quick recap. The tested Toyota Grand Highlander is in the Hybrid Max Platinum trim. It's the top trim that'll ring in at roughly $67,000 before taxes. Note the non-hybrid starts just above $50,000, while the non-max, but still a hybrid trim, costs just below $62,000, but also gets way better fuel economy than the max. And speaking of, the hybrid max is rated at a combined 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers, but we never saw numbers that low. We did manage to get it down to the high 9s. With standard all-wheel drive, Max's turbocharged engine and 2 electric motors are paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission that makes 362 horsepower and 400 pound-foot of torque. Not bad for a big 3-row SUV. During our long-term test, John and Nick also had the chance to get comfy in this Grand SUV, and both had some interesting things to say about it. John noted the Grand Highlander Max Hybrid powertrain really impressed him with quick torque from the battery and, surprisingly, plenty of grunt. It offers a relaxed drive that prioritizes shock damping and without trying to be too sporty. Its biggest flaw is the wireless charging pad, he says, that needs to be redesigned ASAP. His phone kept sliding off of the charging pad because it was a slippery surface with nothing to hold a phone in place. Nick noted the bigger Highlander felt like it was meant to make driving easier. Things such as the head-up display, bird's eye view camera, and parking sensors, wireless, phone connectivity, power liftgate, ventilated seats, automatic wipers, just to name a few, made things far easier. A powerful engine made passing easy on highway on-ramps, but despite all of that, it couldn't help the SUV to not feel somewhat slow and clumsy at lower speeds, not to mention its massive size, which makes parking an anxiety-inducing affair. After everything that John and Nick said about this vehicle, I have to say I agree with both of them and more. I think I may have been a bit overzealous when I said the Grand Highlander might change my mind about minivans. And I may have to backtrack a bit on that, but we'll get into that a bit more at the end of this video. I do love the Grand Highlander and I've come to enjoy it, and I think it is a great ride. And I've come to learn a lot of its quirks and how to get around it. For example, it beeps a lot, but I guess that's all a part of the safety aids and you can't really get at it for that. That said, a SUV does not need to be this massive inside to make it really great. Don't get me wrong, there's amazing cargo space, even with those back seats up. Behind the third row, you can still get a huge hockey bag in there, which is what John made sure to test when he drove this. And of course, there's also really great legroom in that third row. My little kids are great back there, but if you watch the video of our intro, then you know that I fit pretty well back there as well, which I guess isn't saying very much because I'm short, but Toyota did mention that the Grand Highlander was supposed to be able to fit adults back there, and I would say that's pretty true. It may not be where you want to sit, but you can if absolutely needed. While John did mention that the Grand Highlander places itself in a very good position within the Toyota lineup, it's not something that we've seen before, as it's bigger than the Highlander but smaller than the Sequoia. I think that also puts it in a little bit of an odd position when it comes to pitting it up against other competitors. So basically, it is a competitor of so many 3-row vehicles, including smaller ones like the non-Grand Highlander, or the Honda Pilot, or popular SUVs like the Kia Telluride or Hyundai Palisade, but because it's a little bit bigger, it'll compete against some of those huge 3-row SUVs too, like the Toyota Sequoia, Chevy Suburban, and even the GMC Yukon, which is slightly more expensive, but bigger, but even then, you'll get way better cargo space in the Grand Highlander. And while we didn't get a chance to test it against the all-new Hyundai Santa Fe with 3 rows, we did get a chance to compare it to a couple other SUVs with Sami Hajsad. Sammy Hajjasad and I did compare it to two others. First, it was up against its premium cousin, in which we asked if the more expensive and more luxurious Lexus TX was worth some $20,000 more than the Toyota. Ultimately, we decided nope, because the Grand Highlander is pretty luxurious itself. But you want to be noticed a bit more, and then in that case, the Lexus may be better for you. Next, we compared it to the Mazda CX-90, and while the Mazda has some pretty good things going for it, the Grand Highlander is more practical and came out on top when we talked about family use of a vehicle. As a mom of three, quite literally the target audience for this Toyota Grand Highlander, I think it did a really good job of standing the test of my family of five, as well as a whole ton of weather changes over the last few months. However, there's one thing that the Grand Highlander doesn't have: sliding doors. And speaking of, we've got one more comparison for the Grand Highlander, so you'll have to stay tuned to Driving.ca to check it out against the tried and true Toyota Sienna. For Driving.ca, I'm Renita Narain. For more SUV reviews and news, check us out on Driving.ca or follow us on social media.